Yes, we are back. So we have our new panel, and if Ruby wants to go ahead and activate, and everybody can activate their cameras and their microphones to make sure that we can hear you. All right, fantastic. Got one more, and turn it over to Ruby. So there you go, Ruby.
Well, I am so excited to have this panel because I'm a fan of every single person that's in this group right now. So ladies, welcome. As we had mentioned, this is a panel around human-centered sustainability strategies. I think that right now when people think about the word sustainability, they automatically connect it to environmental issues without realizing that environmental issues are actually human issues. And especially when it comes to very vulnerable populations, it is something that affects so many people. When we think about who's affected most by climate change, it's really about the people who are living in conditions where their communities are being affected by different types of factories or bad business practices, really. So I'm super excited to bring in my panelists. We'll start with Sam Hartsock, who is representing in San Francisco. She is not only the Director of Education at Remake, a nonprofit that is using fashion as a force for good, but she's also the co-founder of QB Consulting, which is a purpose-driven strategy and communications firm that consults Fortune 500 companies, nonprofit organizations, and communities on how to build better ways to report ESG and communicate their ESG commitments. So welcome, Sam. Thank you so much. We also have Yes, and we also have Valentina Suarez, who is, as we met her earlier, she is part of our global team, but also the founder and director of MOLA, which is mobilizing the sustainable fashion movement in Latin America, but she's also a fashion designer. So it's great to have her expertise and her voice here. We also have Faduma Aden tuning in from Sweden by way of Somalia. She is the founder of Kuntilier, which is an agency that is really built around helping businesses create more inclusive strategies. So whether you're developing a product or a service, she wants to make sure that you're designing with communities of color in mind so that you are able to reach wider communities with your product or service. Last but not least, we have Saloni Shrestha. She is the founder and design head of Agati, a women's sustainable lifestyle brand. She creates beautiful dresses. One day I want to wear one of her dresses, but she's been trained in some of New York's leading design houses, as well as created a label of her own in Singapore. But she is also hails from the Himalayas, and she grew up appreciating and embracing local craftsmanship and the work of artisans, which translates to her work today. So let me just pull up our slides here so that we can go on to our first question. 1 second here. Okay, 1 second. Thank you all for your patience. This platform is still new for all of us, so let's see. Up. Okay, here we are. There we go.
Wonderful.
All right. So human-centered sustainability. I think most people need to really think about that connection, especially businesses who are, impacting so many different types of people in their work. So my first question, I want to ask Sam to take this on first. Of course, all of you are going to have an opportunity to answer this question, and I will prompt Sam first to ask, what does it look like when businesses, cities, or even governments launch sustainability initiatives that put people first? Oh, Sam, your sound is not on.
How about now?
Perfect.
Good? Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I think when you're really looking at building people first strategies, a lot of it, whether you're a city, a brand, a factory, it's really asking about how do my business decisions from the product I'm designing to the suppliers I contract, to the capital investments I make, to the technology I'm choosing to use, how do these decisions impact the most vulnerable among us? And one of the reasons we are asking this is because this conversation really is a lot about risk. It's how much risk are you asking people to carry for a business? we are really witnessing this in real time right now. We are witnessing the risk we've asked garment makers to carry for the fashion industry. And really that due to COVID-19, there's been this complete halt in the demand for sales, plummeting, causing brand sales over month to completely stop. Retailers are asking their suppliers to hold their orders. Their suppliers are holding the pay that goes to garment makers. So again, you're just seeing risk go down that train. So the really first thing we need to do is say, like, how can we distribute the risk amongst all of us and just not push it down to those with the least power?
Absolutely. And really looking at it as a partnership with their makers versus looking at versus viewing it as, these workers depend on our business. It's actually as businesses, you depend on people to create good products for you. So it's really about evening that that playing field and making sure that you're looking at people as partners and collaborators versus merely as workers and employees or laborers. So thank you so much, Sam. Faduma, I'd like to give you the mic. And how would you answer this question?
People first. Well, you can connect back to the topic here with the human center. For me, it's about perspective. If we look at beyond fashion, because I usually work with different industries, fashion being one, but one great example from Sweden here is a municipality that decided to involve young girls in the development of the urban environment that they live in. Usually the urban planning is done by, it's mostly male dominated, but this time they allowed or engaged young girls in their environment. And through Minecraft, the young girls created an environment that they want to be in, and this will be taken in now in their surrounding. And they created spaces where they feel safe. They created safe places where they think even grandmothers could be in. And so young girls have different perspectives, and for me that's a great example beyond fashion on how a city can be created with involving different people. I mean, societies, you have diversity within society, and young girls are part of it. So putting different perspectives in, as well within businesses, you could say that it is very important to get different perspectives in. Whenever, for example, we see an advertisement that has large representation, we should think that it shouldn't stop within the PR and the advertisement that we see, but the actual representation should be also represented internally within the structures, the hiring systems, as well as in top leadership position where the perspective is even more important. So for me, it ties back to perspective. Exactly.
Yeah, so I think it's about also including diverse voices in the decision-making process so that people can really understand how this product or service is not only going to affect a certain population, but the entire population. Thank you so much, Faduma. Okay, I'd like to go ahead and toss this question over to Saloni. How would you approach this question?
Well, if it's done right, and I hope, there's been very good improvement about, government policies working closely with the private sector, whether it is about, controlling car emissions or building, greener, LEED certified buildings. I think when you see these initiatives working, thinking about people first and, alongside, of course, the environmental movement that's going on, we can definitely dream about, an equitable society, which has equal opportunities, which is about, fairly distributed income, safer, healthier for, as many of us on this earth. And what I see is that when the policies and the private sector work together, they can also rally the wider population. Right? They can think the wider population who is beyond these policy making, groups to be a part of it. Because I don't think it is just the policymakers who can make, bringing people first to success. But of course, to give you some example of how it worked in India, I don't know if you all have heard of Khadi. It is. It was started during the Mahatma Gandhi days. I'm so sorry. Something in my throat that's bothering me.
That's a allergy season.
It just started as the webinar started. I don't know. So yes, Khadi. It was about spinning. It was about hand-spun cotton cloth, where people used to spin it themselves. And the Prime Minister of India, the current Prime Minister of India, Mr. Modi, he wanted to build or bring the socially, the economically challenged population of India to rise more than what they were. And after 26 years, when he encouraged the hand spinning of cotton cloth to be a priority, it changed not just for the weavers, who were facing very challenging economic times, but also it was carried over by celebrities promoting it. It was by designers, using hand-spun cloth in their collections, and then that finally reaches the consumers. So that movement from policies to the wider population was an immense movement. Another one that I read was about the whales in UK. This is amazing. They have an act for the preborn humans that act actually has development plans for the future generation, and how things would be better for them when they actually come into this world. So I mean, these are just two simple examples of how, yes, putting the policies in place with people in mind first not only just benefits the economy, the government, the companies, but just the whole the whole set of countries as well.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's also about like making it accessible so that everyone
yes,
can take part in it, and making it as simple as possible so that everyone has a role that they can play to make it a collaborative movement. Thank you so much, Saloni. Okay, Valen, last but not least, how would you approach this question of whether or how what it looks like when businesses, cities, or governments put people first?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. So I'm gonna speak from our experience here in Latin America. We do have a lot of social issues going on. It's such a diverse territory that this must be taken into account with a lot of sensitivity. So my first answer would be like, we must make fashion personal, and we must be careful. So we have all these governments and all these businesses and all of these cities taking decisions without even knowing what people actually need.
Absolutely.
And without even taking their voices into account. And that's very, very time wasting, very unequal, very I don't know, I really get upset when I see these things, because there, of course, here in Latin America, we do receive a lot of funds from a lot of places, Europe, United States, and for businesses and governments to implement initiatives in terms of sustainability. But the majority of those projects are based on what they think that we need. And that there's a real huge problem, because of course we do have, I mean, it's amazing how many issues we have in terms of our societies. And from Mexico to Argentina, there are a lot. So we do have to take this very with a lot of delicate treatment, and not only doing it because the rest of the world is doing it, but actually because we do believe in those initiatives. I find it very hard sometimes to see initiatives that go because, yeah, we're very good and we're doing this and we're saving lives, and then you go and talk to the people that are actually involved, and they say, no, this is not what we were thinking, this is not
right, this is not what we needed.
Exactly. I don't know, it looks pretty right on the billboard, but actually there's nothing happening, there's no impact. And that's also based upon this idea that there's like two ideas. The first one, we do good when we have this social project, so we are good people, we're good governments, and then there's this other side when we don't know, here in Latin America especially, we don't know what sustainability is still. So
Yeah.
so we have businesses saying, yeah, we're sustainable because we have paper bags for our products. No,
Right. How does that
like,
affect the
please
people?
don't do that, because you are spreading a word about misinformation, and it's not that. We really need to be approaching this with seriousness, and of course being more sensitive and listening to what people actually need.
Yeah. So I think what I'm hearing from you and from everyone really that's been on the panel is that it's really about implementing design thinking and designing problems or designing solutions for people's problems before assuming that they have the solution already, right? Because I think that's what is missing. A lot of times people think that, oh, I think I know the solution, so I'm going to implement this solution without first listening to the communities that it's going to affect, and then and taking into account their needs, their wants, and then designing the initiative around that. So thank you so much. Yes, Saloni.
Just to add, I mean, absolutely, what you've just mentioned. I think, thinking about what challenges they have, understanding the societies and the cultures as well, rather than just kind of throwing solutions because they feel that, okay, this policy is addressing this problem. But also, just to quickly mention, something I wanted to talk about earlier was the women, in the workforce. I think we need globally a lot more work to go into including women into not only the workforce, but also, encouraging businesses. I think there are many good examples, but it needs to happen probably at a much more global scale, to include women into, training them, and then, getting them to the next place of becoming skilled, and then obviously them leading the future generation. And, I can give a lot of, because of my background of working in Asia and India, there are obviously a lot of cultural challenges where, there is a certain expectation of the women population to be working at home, but they're very skilled. But slowly there is, a way to bring them into management skilled, yes, into management positions. So I think having women in the workforce and the policies that encourage it would be very critical.
Yeah, having women leaders, period, is what I think will solve a lot of problems. Thank you so much. So I think going to our leading into this next question about bringing in people into the decision-making process. How I think a lot of times, especially within the sustainable fashion world, we talk about accessibility. Right? There's still a lot of people who think, oh, sustainable fashion, that's not for me. That's for people who have the luxury to participate in sustainable fashion. I don't think that I can participate because sustainable fashion brands, for example, are too expensive for me. So it's not for me. Sustainability is not for me. That's for people who have luxury item access. So for you, in your perspective, how actually does sustainability affect people of color and vulnerable communities? And how do we involve them in the process without asking them to invest in a high economic way, without having to have a price tag to participate? So Valen, I'd love for you to answer this first, because I know that there's a lot of communities that you work with in Latin America, but also I'm interested in some of the work that you might have done with indigenous communities. How can we involve these types of communities into our movement?
Okay, so here we've got another sensitive topic. When it comes to indigenous people, and actually, I think that this comes for everyone that's in a vulnerable community. We have to talk about cultural appropriation once, and that's a very, very interesting topic, because there's this this blurred line when you don't know when to step in or when to not. So yeah, basically we do have these beautiful communities, and the first thing that we have to do with them is learn from them. So their lifestyles, their cosmogony is to admire and to respect, and not only to use. We have to ensure them that we're co-creating with them,
Absolutely.
and not only
Taking from them.
taking from them everything that they believe in, because these indigenous people, they have a lifestyle and everything is so coherent, everything is so beautiful that we cannot come in because I really like how you need that bag and that's it. No, we really have to be so empathic with them. So that's the first thing: learn, listen closely, and start a relationship with them, a long-term relationship with them. So then we have this thing. I teach inclusion in design as well. So we have two parts. The first one is to include people in terms of my clients. So my communication, how I treat them, how I make them feel like exactly you can use this, you can wear this, you are part of this society or this community that I'm creating. And the other one is co-creating and actually including them in the process. So there's a lot of things that are beautiful from that relationship. The first one is that we have a beautiful product, a beautiful story to talk about. And I think that's amazing. We do have a lot of designers in Universo Mola, which are working closely with artisans, with indigenous people, and they actually go and spend days with them and they co-create the products, and not they are not saying like I want this and this and this in this color and this thing. No, they actually create a product out of this relationship, and they spend days there and absolutely disconnected from the world and come out with this, and you really feel that they're doing it with transparency, which is main topic. And then all of your communication will be absolutely coherent.
Yeah.
If you do respect these people, and if you do have in your process and in your company all of these appropriation policies, and you actually know and you assess yourself with consultants, with lawyers, with actually go and say, okay, what should I do to ensure these people that we are doing this right.
Thank you. Thank you. I really like the idea again of like not looking at it as like taking from communities or exploiting communities, but really about co-creation and collaboration. And again, this idea of like an equal partnership and really changing the position, right, of like hierarchy. It's time to like take away the hierarchy when it comes to the connections that we create in the industry. Faduma, I'd love to invite you to share your perspective on this question. How do you feel that we can continue to use the movement to be more inclusive, to make sure that people of color feel like they have access to this?
I think I will continue with the same spirit. You could say that from my experience here in Sweden, the panels on sustainability, especially within fashion, it's related to, you could say, environmental perspective, sometimes economical, the circular economy. And it's usually the same people that are invited to the panels and the same crowds that are in these sessions. So the questions becomes how do we involve people that are really not included? It's an exclusive community, you could say sometimes. And that is a difficult question, but I think that the answer lies within within realizing that one shoe doesn't fit all. We need to understand what type of questions are relevant for the diverse communities of people of color. What are the relevant topics? It might not be the ones that we see today. We have yet to see those type of panels being set up in at least in Stockholm, but I hope it happens. If we draw parallels to what's going on today as well, we see that the pandemic, for example, is affecting marginalized groups even more than other groups. And that is the case that UN reports as well when it comes to climate change. So marginalized groups are more affected, even though we do not have the ownerships of these questions. So there needs to be, we need to close the gap, and that requires more than just simple solutions.
Yeah, and that's why I loved having you on the panel, Faduma. I think also, I didn't get to mention earlier, but you're also a fashion designer. You created a sustainable fashion brand targeted for modest fashion to serve your community so that they can see that they can also be part of this movement. So thank you for your work. Sam, what about you? How would you approach and answer this question?
Yeah, the way we think about it at Remake, and this is really central to a lot of our documentaries that we do with our Maiden series, is we bring the voices of the garment makers to the forefront. So we focus on a lot of seeing people as mothers and sisters and daughters and friends, and listening to their, their everyday lives, because that's the big connection we want to grow. And so we also focus on bringing designers from the best fashion schools in CCA and Parsons down to meet these women. So we are releasing Made in America right now, really understanding like who are the garment workers in LA? What does Made in America really mean? Let's meet these people. Let's learn about their lives and let's hear from them. At Remake, we're really about giving garment makers a stage. And I think to that question that Faduma was just asking or just answering too, is just like, how do we bring these voices in? A big part of what we do is every first Monday of the month at 9 a.m. Pacific, we have a Remake community call. And just last month, we invited the Garment Workers Center and Garment Workers in LA onto that call so we can hear directly from them, their stories, their needs, because that's really what's missing in the fashion industry. Like Aisha, the founder of Remake, or me as director of education can report out what we hear, but there's never anything more stronger than hearing directly from these individuals who need our help, who need our support, who need us to help make this industry more transparent. So that's a lot of how we focus, just elevating voices of the vulnerable communities that aren't getting heard.
Absolutely. And I'm also an ambassador for Remake. And one of the things that I loved about why I joined is because Aisha said that her mission was to connect the women on opposite sides of the supply chain together. And I think that's so important because fashion is so much targeted towards women. We're the largest consumers of fashion, but but women are also the largest group that makes our clothes. And there's a lot of women's empowerment issues that are being ignored in the supply chain. So I think that making those connections are really important, and making it personal so that we understand that, we care about equal pay, but what about, equal pay for the people making our clothes? Why couldn't we care about that? Because it's part of the larger women's movement. So thank you for the work that you're doing at Remake, Sam. Saloni, how about you? How would you respond to this question?
Across different conversations, I think one of the important topics for sustainability activists or brands have been about diversity, right? And many of you have already mentioned, I think that's something important to have in our space. And as people of color or vulnerable communities, we are already minorities, and to tap on the opportunities, as I was speaking about before, the equitable society, that is very challenging. What we do at Agati, we're working with the artisans who are the vulnerable communities in current coronavirus times. They are being very badly hit with canceled trade shows where most of their orders get sold, where people devalue and do not respect their work, which is generations of work, just because they do not sit in a fancy office or glassed room. That lack of respect is also a very big challenge that we see. So what I feel, and something that I feel has worked also, is being on ground and connecting the consumers who also has no information, and bringing the information from the artisans, from being on ground and explaining and giving whatever you're making, whether it's apparel or home goods or shoes, anything, giving the information. I think this transfer of knowledge of what the vulnerable communities are about, their stories, I think that connects at a much more human level when people know about it. At the other side, for example, the West, in the West, where the consumers, the developed, state of affairs are, and whereas manufacturing hub based in Asia, that's where the production hub is. And as the amazing work Remake is doing in bringing all about the information from different parts of the world to where the consumer is based, I feel the vulnerable communities will definitely benefit from this transfer of knowledge. What Faduma mentioned, that respect is so important. And being on ground, we organized a tour, a non-profit tour, and took some of our clients from this side of the world to India, different cities where they saw, they interacted, and they met these artisans. The lack of the barrier in language, but still some form of communication was so beautiful. And yes, these are small things, but it will lead to a very big difference in bringing about a positive impact for these communities.
Thank you, ladies, so much. We're running a little bit out of time on our panel, but I would love to also actually address. I'm missing a question here, but there was supposed to be another question that's on the slide. You touched on it earlier, Saloni, about canceled orders, and I want to give an opportunity for you and Sam to talk about the Pay Up campaign. What is a Pay Up campaign, and how can people participate?
Yeah, I can go first. And it was a great tie to what was talked about in the session earlier around digital activism. Right now, the Pay Up campaign is a petition on the Change.org platform. You can also go to it on remake.world. And on March 30th, right when we heard that brands were starting to cancel orders, we heard from our partners in Bangladesh, from the Workers' Right Consortium. We rallied together, made a target list of around 24 brands, and began petitioning to them. Today, we have over 10,000 signatures. So there are actions you can take today, right now, that make a difference. Since then, over 13 brands have promised to pay for their orders, and we'll be petitioning these brands until they really commit. Right now, it's about driving awareness, showing that we care as consumers, as people who love fashion, that we care about what's happening to the garment makers, and that this risk can't sit solely on the people who make our clothes, that brands need to carry this cost risk as well. And yeah.
I was going to ask you, Sam, if you can, when you are done with the panel, maybe you can share that link on the chat box so people know where to find it. But if you are online now, you can check it out on remake.world, as well as follow the hashtag #PayUp. I know that I myself got a chance to, I got to participate, but also there's a couple of funds, emergency funds for garment workers that we can all contribute to, so that the people who are losing work and who are losing their paychecks can have a little bit of relief. As we wrap up, I just want to invite you ladies, maybe just really quickly, to just say in just one sentence, which one of the UN Sustainable Development Goals do you address in your own work? Let's start with Valen.
Okay, thank you. So I'm a believer that fashion has to do with the 17 goals, actually, but in Universal we are tackling the number 4, quality of education, 8, decent work and economic growth, 12, of course, responsible consumption and production, and 13, climate action. I think those are the main ones that through our work, either educational, with our designers, and actually with the whole chain of production, we are tackling right away.
Thank you. Okay, Saloni, please go next.
Actually, if I could just for a few seconds add something to the Pay Up campaign.
Sure.
I think, as a fashion industry, we are continuously trying to, we have to continue to evolve into being more responsible and conscious. And I was just listening to Claire Press Wardrobe Crisis podcast, and there are, some like very, very sad facts that bring out even from factory owners about what's happening. So I would really urge everyone to listen, and everyone's signature, like how Sam mentioned, everyone's signature makes a difference, because from, 1 billion not being paid, now there are companies, with this shout out from the public, they are paying now. There's been a movement, and this voice makes a difference. So I just wanted to add to that. In terms of the sustainability goals, I think one of our main key ones is the responsible consumption and production. We've always been big on, buy less, buy well, and tackling the problem of mindless, endless consumption. So not just focusing, while Agati creates these capsules, not just focusing on making it environmental friendly, but also artisanal, because everything that is handmade, it is soulful. And when that value, the beauty of it transfers to the wearer, to the consumer, they understand and they value it. So I feel like, we are practicing slow fashion in not following trends, not getting beaten by the number of seasons, and just being very responsible in how we produce it, with whom we produce it, and just, letting our audience, our community stay far away from mindless, endless consumption.
Thank you. All right, Sam, how about you? And just, quick wrap up of what UN SDG goal you address in your work.
I don't know if my...
Oh, we lost Sam, but that's okay. We'll come back to Sam. Maybe she can reconnect. Faduma, take this question on.
Yes, absolutely. You could say it's very clear. I work mostly with reducing inequalities, which is goal number 10, and also within sustainable cities and communities, which is goal number 11. And I've seen, I do this by working alongside companies and consulting them. And I've seen there's interest even more because of the pandemic now, that companies are looking to ask, what can we do for the society? How can we start our work within sustainability? So yeah, that's what I would.
Thank you so much. And thank you all, ladies, for joining. Sam, looks like there might be some technical issues, so we're just going to go ahead and move forward. But if you want to learn more about our panelists, please take a screenshot now of their social media handles. You can see it right here on the screen. Keep in touch with them and make sure you participate in the Pay Up campaign if you can. All right. And then again, thank you for joining us here on SFSFWI. We have our third panel coming up next with Sandra about policies and legislation. And if you have been enjoying the panel so far, we warmly invite you to take part in our movement, support us, and contribute so that we can continue pushing this movement forward. You can see the contribution button on the chat box. And again, thank you all, ladies, from joining in from Latin America, from Sweden, and from San Francisco today, and we'll see you again later. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.